When my ex-husband invited me to his wedding, I sat at the table for a long time without moving. The envelope was cream-colored, my old name written neatly in the middle, Mrs. Eleanor Hart. I remember thinking it had to be a mistake. After everything he had done, after the way he left, why would he want me there? But it wasn't a mistake. He wanted me to see him happy. He wanted me to see that he'd moved on while I was still alone. At least, that's what I thought then. I didn't know that the same invitation meant something completely different. That it would mark the day my life began to turn around. My name is Eleanor Hart. I live in a small town by the sea. It's quiet here. One main street, a few small cafes, a church that rings its bell at noon. Most people know each other. When someone passes away, the whole town shows up at the funeral. When someone gets married, there are cars honking up and down the street. I wasn't born here. I came here when I was 27, newly married and full of hope. Mark, my husband, sold boats for a living. He was handsome, funny, and full of big dreams. I met him at a fair where he helped his cousin run a food stall. He had that easy kind of charm that makes you believe everything will be all right. I was a quiet person, shy, the kind of woman who reads more than she speaks. When he told me he loved how calm I was, I believed him. Maybe he did love that at first. We married a year later. The ceremony was small, simple, just family. He looked at me and said, "It's you and me against the world." I thought he meant it. We bought a small house by the water. Nothing fancy, just cozy. He built a porch and said, one day we'd sit there as grandparents. I held on to that picture for a long time. The first few years were good. We laughed, worked hard, planned for the future. We wanted children, but it didn't happen. At first, we thought it was just bad timing. Then it became years of waiting, testing, hoping, crying. After the last doctor's visit, he barely spoke on the drive home. That night, he sat in front of the TV while I folded laundry in the next room. He didn't say a word. From that day, I felt something change. He started coming home later. He blamed work, said he had new clients, new deals. He stopped asking me how my day was. I stopped asking where he had been. Sometimes marriage doesn't break in one big moment. It cracks a little each day until one morning you wake up and realize you're strangers. He began to criticize me. "Why don't you dress up anymore? You've gotten boring. You always worry too much." It hurt, but I stayed quiet. I thought if I loved him more, he'd soften again. He didn't. One evening, while putting his jacket away, I found a folded note in the pocket. It said, "Can't wait to see you again. Friday. Love." My stomach dropped. I knew there was someone else. I'd known for months. I just hadn't wanted to see it. When he came home that night, I told him I knew. He didn't deny it. He just said, "Well, at least now it's out in the open." That was it. No apology. No trying. He left 3 weeks later. I didn't beg him to stay. I packed his things, handed him the suitcase, and said, "I hope she was worth it." He didn't answer. After 22 years, I was alone. At first, I didn't know what to do with myself. I woke up too early, went to bed too late, forgot to eat, and cried over small things. People in town whispered. Some said I should have seen it coming. Others said I was better off. Everyone had an opinion. I stopped going to church, stopped visiting friends. The silence was heavy, but it was honest. Then, 6 months after the divorce, I got that letter, the wedding invitation. It felt like a cruel test. He wanted me to see that he'd replaced me, maybe to remind me that he'd won. For a week, I left it on the counter, unopened. But one morning, something in me shifted. I thought, no, I'll go. Not to make peace with him, to make peace with myself. The ceremony was held at a hotel by the ocean, the same hotel where we once spent our 10th anniversary. That alone made me laugh. I wore a simple navy blue dress. No jewelry except my mother's old earrings. When I walked in, people looked. He saw me before I saw him. He looked surprised, not because I came, but because I looked calm. He came over and said, "Eleanor, you came." I said, "Yes." I wanted to wish you well. His new wife stood beside him, younger, confident, smiling in that polite way people do when they don't know the full story. I shook her hand and said, "You look lovely. Congratulations." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't wait for dinner or photos. I got in my car and drove home with the windows down. The air felt clean. I didn't cry. I didn't feel jealous. I just felt done. That night, I made tea, sat on the porch, and told myself, "You survived. That's enough." After that day, something in me finally settled. I sold the house that we'd shared. Too many memories lived in those walls. I found a small cottage closer to town. It had white shutters and a small yard where I could grow lavender. For the first time in years, I woke up without dread. I started working part-time at the library again, the same one where I used to work before I married Mark. It felt good, quiet, familiar. People started to treat me differently. They no longer saw Mark's ex-wife. They saw me, Eleanor, the woman at the library who remembered everyone's name. Every evening I'd close the shop, walk to the bakery, buy a small loaf of bread, and go home to eat in peace. Loneliness didn't scare me anymore. I realized that being alone and being lonely aren't the same thing. One rainy afternoon, a man came into the library, dripping wet and smiling. He asked where the travel books were. I pointed and he said, "Do you ever travel?" I said, "Not far, just here and there." He grinned. "Then maybe I'll start small too." His name was David Lawson. He was a retired school teacher who had moved to town a few months earlier. He lived near the cliffs in a small rented house. He started coming to the library often, sometimes to borrow books, sometimes just to talk. He had kind eyes and the kind of calm that made you forget time. He told me about his late wife, about losing her to cancer. He said grief changes a person. I told him I understood. We began walking together on weekends. Sometimes we'd just sit by the sea in silence. He said, "It's nice to have company that doesn't need words." I agreed. With David, things were simple. No pretending, no guessing what he meant. He was present. One evening, we watched the sun set from the cliffs. He said, "You seem peaceful." I smiled. It took me a long time to find it. He said, "Then don't let anyone take it again." I didn't realize until later that I was falling in love again, slowly, gently, without fear. He'd bring me coffee on rainy days. I'd bake for him on Sundays. We didn't talk about the past much. It was enough to know we'd both survived it. Almost 2 years after the divorce, I received another letter from Mark. The handwriting looked different, rushed, uneven. It said, "Eleanor, I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to tell you that Claire left. She said I'm difficult, maybe impossible. I think I understand now. I hope you're well. Mark." I read it once, then folded it and placed it in a drawer. There was no anger left in me, no joy either, just peace. I whispered, "I hope you learn what love really means." And that was that. That night, David noticed I was quiet. He asked, "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Yes, just closing an old chapter." He smiled. "Good. You've got too many new ones waiting." Life with David was easy. We started having dinner together every evening. He'd tell me stories from his teaching days, and I'd laugh until my stomach hurt. He helped me fix the broken fence in my yard. I helped him plant herbs in his kitchen window. We became a small routine that felt like home. A year later, he asked me to marry him. There was no big speech, no surprise. We were just sitting on the porch one evening, watching the sky turn pink, and he said, "Ellie, I don't want to live another day without you. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the sentence. We married quietly at the courthouse. No gown, no crowd. Just 2 signatures and a promise to keep life simple. A few months later, David fell ill. At first, it was a cold. Then it turned into weeks of weakness and doctor visits. I was scared. After everything I had lost, the thought of losing him too felt unbearable. But I stayed by his side. cooked, read to him, held his hand when he couldn't sleep. One morning, when he was feeling stronger, he said, "You've taken care of me more than I deserve." I told him, "You've given me more peace than I ever had. We're even." He smiled, and for a moment, I felt something heal that I didn't know was still broken. He recovered slowly. Every day, he'd walk a little more, eat a little more. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch, he said, "You know, we're proof that life doesn't end after heartbreak." I said, "No, it begins after it." When he was well again, we decided to open a small used bookshop together. We called it Second Chapter. It was right next to the bakery. People came in for old novels, travel guides, and sometimes just for company. We'd make coffee, chat, and laugh. Every so often, a customer would ask how long we'd been married. David would smile and say, "Long enough to know peace takes practice." I loved that line. He was right. Now I'm 60. The bookshop runs on its own most days. We live above it, in a small apartment that smells like coffee and paper. Some mornings, I still wake up early and walk to the sea. The air feels the same as it did all those years ago, but I don't. Sometimes I think about Mark, not with anger, just with understanding. He taught me what love is not, and life taught me the rest. When I heard he'd moved away, I felt nothing but relief. I wish him peace, too, wherever he is. Because peace, once you find it, doesn't belong to anyone else. People often ask how I forgave him. The truth is, I didn't do it all at once. Forgiveness isn't a single act. It's choosing every day not to let bitterness win. I stopped replaying the bad memories. I stopped checking what he was doing. And one day, without even trying, I realized I was free. Mark wanted to show me that he had moved on. But what he really did was give me the chance to start over. He built a new house somewhere far away. I built a new life in the same place we began. Only this time, it's filled with laughter, books, and peace. When people ask me what happiness looks like, I tell them, it looks like 2 mugs of coffee on a quiet morning. It sounds like pages turning in a bookshop. It feels like knowing you are safe, even when you are alone. If you are listening to this and your heart is tired, I want you to know you will be okay. You will rebuild. You will love again, even if right now you can't imagine it. Because sometimes the life that feels like the end of everything is only the beginning of something better. Mark once told me I'd never survive without him. He was wrong. I didn't just survive. I found peace. And that's something no one can take away from me.